2supremeTheras, Part 3. The Quake at Pubbarun Monastery. Venerable Moggallana, the left-hand Thera attained miraculous powers so great that it was exceeded by Buddha's powers only. His ID was so mighty that he could transport himself to other realms in a split second. He could transform himself into any forms or shapes he wanted. His sermons were mostly based on his experiences he encountered on his visits to realms far away from this world. To the adherents of Buddha's Dhamma he instilled moral uprightness and Dhamma insight. He preached his disciples to avoid committing sinful deeds, physically, verbally or mentally, since those who did would be reborn in hellish realms to repay the karmic debts. He also pointed out that living a life of rectitude enabled a being to be reborn in an exalted and glorious realm, which he described vividly. His teachings, however, roused hostilities among the gurus of rival religious groups. Most of the sages were virtuous, holy men, truly worthy of reverence, but there were a few who lacked integrity, but possessed mystical powers that some naive people mistook for holiness. Their ritualistic practices were never beneficial to mankind in general. Venerable Moggallana's teachings with attestations about where these fake gurus went hereafter made them resentful. On top of that, they lose followers and donations as people questioned their credibility. Venerable Moggallana performed many marvelous feats that were phenomenal. He subdued ferocious demons. Even Mara, a malevolent deva, who created obstacles and frightened and discouraged sannyas to give up their practices that led to nirvana, surrendered to the great Thera and never harassed him again. Once, a powerful snake deity, called Nandopananda, blocked the path of Buddha and a group of arhants with his enormous body and refused to budge. Venerable Moggallana then shapeshifted into the form of snake, with a bigger body, and squeezed Nandopananda so tightly that the snake deity begged for mercy and gave way to Buddha and arhant. The Quake at Pubbarun Monastery. In the city of Shrasvati of the Kosala Empire, there were two great monasteries donated to Buddha and Sangha by noble benefactors. One was the Jetavana Monastery and the other was the Pubbarun Monastery. Whenever Buddha spent the Lent in Shrasvati, he obligingly resided in one or the other. Once, while Buddha was spending Lent in Jetavana Monastery, he visited Pubbarun Monastery to teach and guide the monks in their quest for liberation. To his disappointment, he found the monks chatting loudly, arguing, teasing each other, looking more like a marketplace than a monastic retreat. They even failed to give due regards to the benefactress of the monastery, Visakha, who visited the monastery 3 times a day to see to the welfare of the monks. Buddha disapproved of noise and uncouth behavior. He told Venerable Moggallana to do something about it. Venerable Moggallana, not the one to tolerate improper behavior, used his ID powers to teach the unruly monks a lesson. With his ID powers he transformed, in his mind, the ground beneath the Pubbarun Monastery into water. Then he held the whole building between his big toe and first toe and shook it, up and down, sideways. The monks were trembling with fear. They were rolling on the ground like marbles, unable to hold on to anything. They all ran away to the Jetavana Monastery shouting, "Please save us, Master." They told Buddha about the terrible and weird thing that took place. The earthquake occurred in the monastery only. The rest of the buildings in the city were standing still and stable. Then Buddha reminded them of the precepts and code of vows the monks must take, and to use their time for meditation, and conversations among them should be on meaningful discussions, an investigation of the Dhamma, and to refrain from idle chatter. Only then, the monks understood why the earthquake took place, and behaved themselves from then on. Venerable Moggallana's ID powers were developed into higher levels by his constant practice of samadhi, noble concentration, meditation. But he needed peace and quiet. That is the reason he often retreated to a secluded place, in the forest not far from his monastery. There, on a natural stone slab, he practiced meditation, passing into nirvana. Venerable Moggallana's ID powers were developed into higher levels by his constant practice of samadhi, noble concentration, meditation. But he needed peace and quiet. That is the reason he often retreated to a secluded place, in the forest not far from his monastery. There, on a natural stone slab, he practiced meditation. His samadhi was so powerful that he could transcend into the highest jhana, a state of mind achieved through higher meditation, state in short period of time. His sermons, which emphasized moral ethics and meditation, appealed to the masses. After listening to his sermons, many people, who were followers of fake sect leaders, started to doubt that these ritualistic practices have any value. They started to take refuge in Buddha, Dhamma and Sangha. Consequently, the self-professed religious leaders lost followers and donations. So, the self-professed religious leaders plotted to eliminate the revered and well-loved Thera. They hired thugs to beat him when he was all by himself in the forest. When the great Thera saw the thugs coming, he levitated to a height where they could not catch him. This went on like this for 6 days. On the 7th day, Venerable Thera scanned his past lives with his tremendous mental powers, and learned that this was his karma debt and, the kamic force being stronger than the Janic force, that this was the way he must repay it. On the 7th day, Venerable Thera scanned his past lives with his tremendous mental powers, and learned that this was his karma debt and, the kamic force being stronger than the Janic force, that this was the way he must repay it. He did not run away on the 7th day. The thugs beat him till his bones were crushed into pieces. They left the battered body curled up on the stone slab, and left him for dead. Using his ID power, he prolonged his life and assuming another body went to Buddha, to pay his last homage. Then Venerable Moggallana gave a sermon about the karma that led him to this dreadful situation. He told Buddha and Sanha that in one of the past lifetimes, he was the husband of a woman, who despised her blind parents-in-law. She begged her husband again and again to get rid of them since she did not want to bear their burden anymore. Stupefied by his wish to please his wife, and her constant nagging, he decided to commit the cruel act. One day he took his parents on a cart to a secluded forest, and pretending to be surrounded by bandits, he beat them hard enough to kill them. The parents, thinking there were real bandits, shouted to their son, "Run, my son, run for your life. Leave us, we are old, but you are still young." When he realized that their love for him was so great that they were worrying about him, instead of for themselves, he felt repentant and then pretended to come to their rescue, took them back home. He looked after them well for the rest of their lives. However, the kamic debt of beating one's own parents was validated. This was the only time left for him to repay his kamic debt, before he passed into nirvana. After paying homage to his master, he passed into nirvana, thus liberated from the samsara. Buddha ordered that the cremation ceremony should be held befitting a supreme Thera. Venerable 2supremeTheras had already passed into nirvana 7 days before, in his hometown. Buddha himself had decided to pass into parinirvana in a few months after. The cremation ceremony was the most magnificent of the time, and his disciples from the human realm to the Deva realm attended to pay their last homage to their revered Thera. End of 2 Supreme Theras, Part 3.